Hi players, bonjour from Paris. My name is Asaf and welcome to my channel Easy Board Games. Today I'm super happy to finally do a video that is going to compare between two grail games. One of them is Starcraft and the other one is Forbidden Stars. So let's quickly do an overview of both of these games and then go directly into the comparison. In Starcraft the board game, each player is going to play one of two possible factions that each race has. We have three races over here, just like in the PC game. One of them is the Terran, the other one is the Zerg, and the third one is the Protoss. This game is going to consist rounds, and in each round we're going to have three main phases. The first main phase is the planning phase, where players are going to take their different order tokens and they're going to place them secretly, either the planets that they already control or in an adjacent planets. Those different order tokens will be to do research, and that means to dig into our technology deck and acquire new technology. We'll be able to build different buildings to upgrade the buildings that we already have and also to purchase units. And we're going to have the mobilize order token that will allow us to move from one planet to another, and by that of course triggering combat. So the planning phase is relatively easy, but we're going to see how it can be complicated a little bit later. Now, after all the players have placed all of their order tokens, we're going to go to the execution phase. In the execution phase, starting with the first player, they're going to go player by revealing one of their order tokens and execute whatever we can see on that. So over here, for example, if we're going to have this mobilization order token, and at the same time we have this transport, a player will be able to move units from one planet to another. And of course, if we have different units on that place, we're going to trigger combat immediately. Now, when we're triggering a combat, we're going to have a certain procedure that will need to take place. So first of all, we're going to remain with this order token right over here on the planet. Then we're going to use the start of the battle abilities if some of the units have them. And we're going to talk about quite a few things that maybe I will not go into them because this is not a how to play. Feel free to check out another video that I did for Starcraft of how to play. Our main goal of this video is just to compare between the two games. Then we're going to draw combat cards. Now, first of all, each player is going to start with already some combat cards in their hand. And then the attacker will start assigning the different units in a pairs of a skirmish combat. That means one unit versus one unit. And sometimes we're going to have different units that will be able to give us a backup, or will be able to have more abilities, but they're not going to be the main unit that is going to do the combat. They're just going to support that main unit. After that, starting with the attacker, we're going to put combat cards, and the combat card that we're going to apply has a few criterias. So first of all, in a combat card, we're going to have two main things that we can see, and that is the attack damage and the health of that specific unit. If the unit that we have chosen is on the card itself, we're going to use the big numbers that we can see to the extreme right or the extreme left. And if it's not the unit that appears on the card itself, we're going to use the small numbers. That means, of course, that most of the time the numbers that we have are going to be smaller. That means that the unit is going to be weaker, let's say it like that. Now, after that, we have also a special ability on that card itself. So for example, if we're going to assign this card right over here, we can see that we're going to gain +1 attack versus a flying unit. Now, of course, since we don't have here a flying unit, then this special power is not going to take place. But since one of the characters over here is a marine, which is again a unit that we can see right over here, we're going to have 5 attack force and 4 health. In some cases, we're going to have another card that we'll be able to use if we're using, for example, a support unit. And then we're going to flip the cards and we're going to resolve that skirmish. After we have resolved the skirmish, we're going to have another thing that is called resolving the splash damage. And after we have resolved all the skirmishes, we're going to resolve the retreats. So basically in a combat, if the attacker did not manage to annihilate all the units of the defender, then the attacker will have to withdraw, to retreat to the place that they attacked from. After we have finished the execution phase, and by that we're going to take out all the order tokens from the board. We're going to move to the third phase, and that is the regrouping phase. In that phase, we're going to, if we're holding the conditions, destroy the different transporters of the different armies. Also, we're going to lose or gain resource cards according to the new areas that we have gained control on or lost control on. And we're going to retrieve the different workers that we have sent during building. So let's go back a little bit and talk about building different things over here in Starcraft. Now here we can see that we have a worker pool that we'll be able to use in order to send these workers and harvest some resources either from our main board that we can see, that player board, or we'll be able to send them to harvest resources that we can see on the planet cards that we're going to gain according to the planets that we're controlling. So for example, if the Zerg would like to build the second level of this building right over here, they will need to pay the price. Here it's going to cost 1 mineral. That means we're going to take one of these workers and we're going to place them in one of the locations that we want to harvest minerals from. That is going to indicate that you have 1 mineral, and we'll be able to take this building and place it right over here. So that means we're going to upgrade that building. Now, when we're upgrading a building, we can see that right now we can produce not only the Zergling that is printed on our player board, we'll be able also to recruit some Hydralisks. Now, basically each race will have a limit to how many units they will be able to produce in each time they're going to use that build order token. But another thing that we'll be able to build are some upgrades to our main base, and that is something that we're going to place on the player board that we have. And after we have retrieved the different workers, we're going to gain conquest points. So those are the points that we can see, for example, right over here. So this is 1, and over here we have 2, and so on. And that means that we're going to advance our marker on this conquest point tracker. Now, usually the normal victory condition is that if one of the players have reached 15 conquest points, but here the thing is that every faction, again, not every race, because in each race we're going to have 2 factions, and each faction has a special victory condition. For example, the Queen of Blades over here, the special victory condition is that you immediately win the game if you control at least 3 areas that provide conquest points during the regrouping phase during stage 3 of the game. So of course it's super important to understand what are the different special victory conditions of the different factions and not only look over here on the conquest points. The last thing in the regroup phase is that players that manage to get one of these event cards are going to, in turn order, start resolving them. So how we're going to get these event cards? We have 2 ways of getting them. The first one is if it's your turn to play, but you don't have an order token that is available. So for example, if it's the blue player's turn, and we're going to have this order token over here, and the purple order token is covering it, then of course the blue player doesn't have right now a token to play. In this case, they're going to earn one of these event cards, which is something that is going to give them usually a bonus a little bit later in the regrouping phase. Another option that we have is if a player decides not to use one of their order tokens, then they're just going to take it back to their own playing area and they're going to take one of these event cards. And even with these event cards, we're going to have stages. So this kind of card is going to be the first stage of the game. Over here, we're going to have the second stage of the game, and below it, we're going to have the third stage of the game. So this is something that you understand, that even with a special victory condition of the purple player, the Queen of Blades, a victory will not be able to be established super quickly, because in any case we'll have to deplete a lot of event cards before even the special victory condition of the Queen of Blades will be able to take place. So that was, I know, really quickly and a little bit chaotic, kind of a run through seeing how does StarCraft play. So let me quickly take off StarCraft off the table, and I'm going to do the same thing for Forbidden Stars. Now, in Forbidden Stars, which take place in the world of Warhammer 40k, we're going to have 4 different factions that we can choose one of them to play with. Now here it's going to be a setup for 3 players. We're going to have here the Chaos Space Marines, the Space Marines, and the Orcs. Now here again, we're going to have a few phases. The first one, just like we saw with the Starcraft before, that was called Strategize phase. Here we're going to have the planning phase. And here again, the different players are going to take one of 4 different order tokens that they will be able to place either in their system or in an adjacent system. And those are builds. So again, we'll be able to build different buildings that are not only special for our faction, those are actually those buildings over there that are kind of neutral. And it just depends which control marker there is below them. So here, for example, we have a factory that belongs to the red player. With that token, of course, we'll be able to also purchase units. So first of all, it will be purchase units and then building the different buildings. And here the difference is that we'll be able to produce according to our production cap that we can see on a specific planet where the factory is situated. So here, for example, since we have 3 skulls, we'll be able to produce up to 3 units. Now here in Forbidden Stars, we'll be able to build the stronger units, the more cities that we have, and that is another building that we can see right over here. So now, since neither of the players have cities, they will be able only to build the basic units, but if they're going to have 1 city, they will be able to build a stronger unit, and if they have 2 or 3 cities, they're going to be able to build stronger and stronger units. The second order token that they have is the advance. So here they will be able to either move units in the system that they're situated, or they will be able to put it in an adjacent system and then start moving forces over there, either if the planets are adjacent, just like this, or if they can create some sort of a path. That means if we have this unit that can carry this unit right over here through the flying unit and over here. Now we'll be able to take units only from a specific system to the system that we have the advanced order token. The next order token that we have is to dominate, and that will allow us to gather the different assets that are pretty much like we had the minerals and gas with Starcraft, but these are going to be different things that will allow us to build buildings and units. So for example, we'll be able to take some of these forge tokens that we can see right over here, the tokens with this hammer, and that is something that we will require to pay when we're building one of the strongest units that we can deploy, or also we'll be able to use that in order to build a stronger unit even if we don't have enough cities on the map. Another thing that we have over here is the reinforcement tokens, and that is something that we'll see quite soon enough with combat. And we have cache tokens, which is something that we'll be able to keep more of these resources when we want to build something, because usually we'll need to pay resources according to whatever we can find right over here in this dial of resources. But this is something that is going to give us extra, since over here we can see that the maximum amount of resources that we'll be able to have is 14. Also, when we use this dominate order token, we'll be able to use our faction's special action that is printed on our player board. The last order token that we have is the strategize order token, and that is something that will allow us to buy, first of all, upgrades to our combat cards. So here we're not going to draw combat cards before we're going to start combat. We're going to have our starting combat cards, and that is basically 10 cards that are divided into 5 pairs, because we're going to have for each card another double, exactly the same thing. So in this case, we'll be able to purchase one of the upgraded combat cards. Again, it depends on how many cities we already possess, and also we'll need to pay resources for that. So whenever we're going to buy some of these cards, we're going to take the card and its copy, and we'll need to discard from our combat deck a couple of cards, going to discard it out of the game. Another thing that we'll be able to buy is an upgrade to an order token. So we haven't talked about it yet in StarCraft. I'm going to talk about it soon enough, but here it's something that we're going to have all the time next to our player board, and every time that we're going to do one of these actions, we're going to be able to do something extra with it. It's going to give us another advantage. So let's talk about combat over here and see how it goes. So the moment that we're going to have units from two different factions, we're going to trigger combat immediately. The first thing that we're going to do is to roll some dice. This is something that we didn't have in Starcraft. Now each unit has a number of dice that they will need to roll. So right over here with this unit, they're going to roll 2 dice and they're going to have something over here. And right over here, we're going to see that with the red unit, they're going to roll only 1 die. So we're going to have 3 possible outcomes. Either it's going to be a damage die, either it's going to be a protection, or it's going to be morale that we'll see at the end of the combat. Now, at this moment, the attacker first needs to decide if they want to play one of these reinforcement tokens that is basically the weakest unit of that faction. They're going to add it right over here. Then the defender is going to do that. Then they're going to shuffle their combat deck and they're going to take 5 cards. From those 5 cards, first of all, the attacker is going to choose one of these cards. Again, they're going to have over here something that is like a general effect, like adding another die. And then they're going to have a specific effect if one of the units that is mentioned on the card is present in the combat. So this is already something that is a little bit more similar to Starcraft. After the attacker and the defender have resolved their cards, now we're going to just add all the symbols that we have with the dice, with the cards themselves, and even if we needed to add a few more of these tokens, and we're going to take damage, we're going to route different units. Again, this is not a how to play Forbidden Stars. Feel free to watch that video that I did also. After the combat has finished, that means after we're going to have 3 rounds maximum, because maybe we have destroyed the enemy's units before. If still we're going to have units over here, then we're going to see who is the winner according to the morale. So it's not necessarily the defender that is going to win, just like we saw with StarCraft. Here we're going to count the morale that is from the dice, from the cards, and from the unrouted units. That means units that are still standing, and their morale can be checked on the player board. Now, the game has a limit of 8 rounds, but a player will be able to win before if they have managed to collect 3 of these tokens right over here of their faction. So the blue player, for example, has 4 of these tokens on the board. So we have over here the first, the second, the third, and the fourth. After we have finished the operation phase, that is basically to resolve all the order tokens, we're going to go to the refresh phase when we're going to collect the different resources. Those are the symbols that we can see on this banner's left side. So again, all the time it's going to be just more resources that will be able to build buildings, units, and purchase the different cards. After that, we're going to rally units. That means if we have routed units, we're going to rally them, just like putting them straight up again. After that, we're going to move the warp storms, which is something, again, that is new in Forbidden Stars, and that is, as you've already guessed, it's something that is going to block movement from one system to another, unless you have a specific technology, of course. So we're going to move them according to the event cards that each faction has. So these event cards that we saw something similar in StarCraft is something that you're going to receive and resolve only if there is a token that you haven't used, or if you have taken this strategize order token, and then after you have bought technology, this is something that you're going to put just like this. Sorry, it's wrong faction, but I think you understand it. And then you will be able to take one of these cards. You'll be able to either put it next to your player board and use it when time comes, or this is something that is going to happen immediately and you're going to shuffle it back. Now, here we can see on this card that we have a certain way to move these warp storms. So here, for example, it's to move it clockwise. So again, we'll be able to do something like this, and other players clockwise are going to do the same thing, just going to move different warp storms. Now, at the end of each round, we're going to see, first of all, if one of the factions have already won, because at the end of each round, if a faction is in a planet that contains one of these tokens, their mission tokens, then when a faction manages to take 3 of these tokens, they're going to immediately finish the game and they will be declared as the winners. Now again, if after 8 rounds, neither of the factions was able to take all of their 3 tokens, then the player that has the most of these tokens is going to win. And if we have a tie, then a player that is controlling more planets will be declared as the winner. So, wow, we had a lot to cover over here. I hope that you're still alive. And let's directly dive into the comparison itself according to a few parameters, starting with the basic thing, and that is to set up and learning the rules. So setup is a little bit tricky over here, because even though it seems that it's a little bit easier to do the setup with Forbidden Stars, right? Because we already have the tiles. I think that it's only going to be easy if you're using the how to play map that you have in the rulebook itself. And if you need to do a setup according to randomize the map, or there is certain criterias, then I think that in Forbidden Stars it's going to take much longer, because each player will receive 3 tiles, 1 of their system and 2 other random. And then according to the turn order, each player is going to place one of the systems one at a time and orientate it according to how they want to do it. And this is something that even at 3 players, a game that I did yesterday, will be able to take up to sometimes 40 minutes of just the setup, because you have to put your system, put your units in the system, then your first opponent will think where they want to place theirs. And of course, maybe in the first round of this thing, it's going to take a little bit less time because there's not tons of options. But of course, already in the second round of placing these systems, you're going to think a lot more. And this is something that I think can cause a lot of analysis paralysis situation. And I think that taking 40 minutes just to set up the game, not because it's a complicated setup, let's say, I don't know, in Frostpunk or maybe in Voidfall or something like that, this is relatively a simple map that you need to create with not a lot of materials, but still 40 minutes before you even started to touch your first turn is quite a lot. While in Starcraft, and let me take you back again to the table and show you, I'm sorry, I know it's a little bit chaotic right now, but I really want to show you the different things. Over here, the players are going to receive 2 planet tokens, and they're going to receive their 2 planets, and they're going to connect them one to another. And there is not like a lot of possible ways. Like, first of all, you just need to connect one planet to another with this passage, which is not something that is going to take too long. The downside of it, and maybe it's going to talk a little bit about the components themselves, is that connecting these puzzle parts over here feels a little bit not so good, because I already felt that sometimes these things that are not from like a thick cardboard or something like that can really break easily, especially because this part right over here is kind of weak. So either you're going to force it really into the planet, or you need to take the planet itself and then just put it on this part, but it's already not so comfortable, especially when you're starting to have different tokens on the planets themselves. So we're going to talk about it again when we're going to talk about the components, but I think that the setup, at least the setup time with Starcraft, is something that is going to take less time. The second thing that I would like to compare is actually the rulebook itself. So here, guys, I'll be honest with you, I think that the rulebook of Starcraft is basically garbage. I apologize to the person or to the people who wrote it, but I think that this rulebook is written really in a bad way, okay? You need to go back and forth in the rulebook in order to understand what's going on when. I think that you have in one page some explanation, and then in like a few pages ahead an example for something that you've did before. You have all over the sudden some tips of something that is not related to the topic right now. And basically when I need to compare, hold on, let me find it. So you have here like a 44-page rulebook that is really feels clunky, not comfortable. It really feels a little bit weird to read it. It took me a long time to understand how to play this game. And at the same time, you're going to have a learn to play rulebook, okay, that is 14 pages, super easy, but I'm not so sure that maybe it's easier if this is the game that you're starting with. I think that it was easier for me to understand Forbidden Stars because I already knew Starcraft, and basically we have the same systems over there, besides the combat that, again, we're going to talk about it a little bit later. But this is already so much more approachable. You have the learn to play guide, and then you have the rules reference if there is something that you want a more explanation, deeper explanation, or if this is already not your first game and you want to see a little bit more details, then these two guides together is something that I truly prefer over this clunky rule book that you have in StarCraft. So in this case, for sure, I think that Forbidden Stars is the more streamlined game, and I think that I prefer a Forbidden Stars in this case. Now let's move on to the main thing, and that is the gameplay itself. So here I'm a little bit turned, because basically Forbidden Stars should have been a streamlined StarCraft. So of course they could not use the same IP, legal issues or something that I'm not aware of at all. But when I read the description for Forbidden Stars, I understood that this is supposed to take everything that was complicated or not so good in StarCraft and make it more streamlined. I can see basically what the creators of Forbidden Stars wanted to do according to StarCraft, because it feels and it seems that Forbidden Stars is a bit more clean. You don't have 1 million units over there. Okay, you can really fit all of the units in one of these trays, and it's not going to be a mess because, again, you don't have a lot. While I'm going to show you what's going on with StarCraft over here, and look only for the Zerg, how many units we're talking about. And this is, again, my table is a little bit messy, but you can see how many units we have over here. That is a lot. Now, to tell you that I find myself using all of these units when I'm playing StarCraft, absolutely not. So that is something that is contributing the clunkiness of StarCraft itself. It just feels like there's a lot and we're not going to use it. So I think that also with the system of like building the different planets, here in Forbidden Stars it feels a bit more clean, because in StarCraft, I don't know if it's going to happen too often, but you will be able, especially with a higher player count, have like a row of planets that is just like stretching all over the table. While over here with Forbidden Stars, again, it depends on how many players you're going to play, but the worst case that you're going to have, it's going to be just a board of like 4x3, and that is something that, at least for the eye, is a little bit cleaner. So this is one of the things that I saw that in Forbidden Stars, they made it to look a little bit more clean, let's say it like that. But again, I think that it comes on an account of other things. Another thing, for example, is when you want to upgrade your units in StarCraft, you'll need to have more buildings. You're going to have 3 different basic buildings, and you will upgrade them by taking another building token of the next level and place it on your player board. So if, for example, we have over here the second step of this building that I truly forgot the name right now, I apologize, then you will actually take it and you're going to place it right over here. So there you go, you have an upgraded building. While in Forbidden Stars, you're just going to take another city and place it in one of the planets. So first of all, you're going to have a limit of how many buildings you will be able to put in a different system, right? Because you cannot have more than one building in a planet. While over here in StarCraft, it's basically something that you're just upgrading in general. Again, to me, it feels that StarCraft is more thematic, and I kind of like this specific building upgrades. Now, again, I think that this is kind of clunky, and the other one just feels that StarCraft is a bit more thematic. Now, Bad Crow Games are working right now on a game that is called Stormgate, that is based on the IP of the computer game, and they have a different system to do it that I think you will find maybe even more clean than what we have in Forbidden Stars and StarCraft. But this is something that I'm going to let you discover on your own, and this is not the topic of this video. Another thing that we can compare between the two of the games is how you're going to pay for your different buildings or units. While in StarCraft, they're still staying very loyal to the IP by using workers that you'll be able to go harvest either the minerals or the Vespene gas. You'll be able to use some of these deplete tokens that we have right over here. If you exceeded the amount of minerals that is depicted on that specific location, either the player board itself or one of the mineral resources that we can find with the different planets. So it does stay more thematic again. Personally, this is something that I prefer, even if at some point you already produced all of your workers and this is not going to be a thing in the game that you need to think about, just to take more tokens and place them on different parts of your player board or on the cards. But again, it feels more thematic. In Forbidden Stars, you're just like, okay, I'm going to take resources from all the friendly planets in that specific system with the Dominate Order token. And you're going to take the different reinforcement that you have right over there, or you'll have the Forge tokens, or a Joker that you can take whatever you want, or these extra resources. So again, to me it feels that in Starcraft it's more thematic, and I definitely prefer it in Starcraft. Again, it's more clunky, it's more not comfortable maybe. Instead of having really this comfortable dial that you're just going to turn and see how many resources you have and how many you're going to expand. And also it's going to help maybe the other players understand how many resources each faction has. But again, this is something that I prefer in Starcraft. Something that is connected to the units that we already talked about with the buildings is just the variety. Okay, because when you're looking in Forbidden Stars, you can see that your variety is kind of limited. We have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different units. And over here in Starcraft, over here we have 8 different units, so already 2 more, but they also really feel different. And you know what, since we're already looking at the figurines themselves, then let's just compare between the materials between the two games. I think that again in Forbidden Stars they have learned something, because over here, yeah, they're starting to already a little bit fall apart, and this is something that can break extremely easily if you're not paying attention when taking it out or back into the box. While in Forbidden Stars you have just this standee that is going to hold your ships, and this is much more comfortable and again feels more kind of streamlined. But when you need to compare actually between the different figurines, then I really think that there is nothing to compare. Starcraft is in my opinion way better. Over here we have this Chaos Space Marine or whatever that is, and look, this is really, I don't know, it feels more symbolic, let's say. While in Starcraft, when you're looking even only on the Hydra disc, I'm sorry that you cannot see it a little bit better, I'm going to take a photo and show it to you, but just looking at this figurine, again, they did such a good job by taking the IP and transfer it into a board game. So figurine wise, I think that Starcraft is so much better. And again, while in Forbidden Stars it feels more kind of a random, like I don't see in this unit like what is something special, or it doesn't have even a character, you know, something that I can relate to. I know it sounds silly because we have aliens in Starcraft, but for me it feels more iconic or just like a symbol. But on the other side, if we're talking about materials, then you're looking at again at the planets, the different planets that we have over here in Starcraft, and it just doesn't feel good. I'm guessing that if Starcraft would have been produced today and there would have been a reprint or something like that, I think they would have found a better system for these planets, because I think that in organized way, I think that the tiles, the systems that we have in Forbidden Stars is actually much better. Okay, this is much cleaner, okay, it's more stable, while over here, I don't know, it feels less good. Over here you have more space. Here, if you're going to have a few more units and buildings on this planet, you're not going to have a lot of space. Sometimes you're missing actually the number of units that you can have on this planet, and this is something that we've already seen, at least in my group, a lot of confusion, and I thought I can have 4 units on this side of the planet, but I can have only 3. So it feels not so comfortable, while over here with this banner that you can see how many units you can have on the planet, it's going to be much clearer. Let's talk about another thing about the end of game condition. So in Forbidden Stars, you just need to collect these tokens, unless you're going to wait until the end of the 8th round, and then you're going to count and you're going to see who controls more planets. While in Starcraft, you will need to take conquest points or to achieve your special victory condition of your specific faction. I don't like how in Forbidden Stars, one player can use one of the things that we haven't talked about yet, but I do want about these warp storms, and just like wait for a certain specific moment and then just like rush into something. And because they're going to be the last player in the turn order, and they're going to put the last order token, and by that they will be able to conquer this area and whatever. If you know a little bit the games, you will know what I'm talking about. And it feels like a player will be able to a little bit rush into victory and doesn't leave the other players a kind of a way to defend themselves. While in Starcraft, if you understand the special victory conditions of the different factions, then you have more of a chance to prepare yourself and to understand what is going to happen and how you can prevent a player from doing this rush to victory. Personally, I prefer more the way that it happens in Starcraft. Don't like this idea of collecting these tokens on the map. Again, I understand that it's going to make the game a little bit take less time, even though I'm not so sure, but we'll talk about it in a few more minutes. Doesn't feel good, doesn't feel thematic. It feels like what I've had in different games of Forbidden Stars, is that a player is just going to take this token and they don't need even to stay control of this planet, because once you have this token, you can sort of already abandon other planets, other systems that you have taken control of during the game. I don't know if this is something that I like. While in Starcraft, if you are not controlling a planet or an area on a planet that contains one of these conquest points symbols that we can see right over here, then you're not going to receive those conquest points at the end of the third phase. If we're already talking about the last phase, let's talk about these warm storms that we see over here. And we can already see later games using kind of the same ideas. I'm guessing, I don't know if they took it directly from here, but you can see it, for example, in Fractal, in Voidfall, and other games that are just using not something that is moving. Actually, in Fractal, you can move it. You can move these things that are blocking entrance for different tiles. In Voidfall, it's going to stay pretty much stable. But again, back to Forbidden Stars, I'm not so sure I'm a fan of these things. I understand that it's going to contribute to the replayability and to the maybe strategical depth, but this is something that is so random. It really depends which kind of card did you take, and if you can still move the last warp storm that is stayed on the map and hasn't been moved yet. It feels more random than actually strategize something. It feels like, oh man, I got especially the event card that I wanted with that specific logo, so I'm going to do something, and now the player that has prepared really a massive attack for the next round is just like, god damn it, so now I'm blocked, now I can't do anything. And if we're already talking about random things, let's talk, I think, about the subject that we've most waited for in this video, and that is the combat system. Okay, so in Forbidden Stars, we have a rolling dice, while in Starcraft, we don't. In Starcraft, we're going to have combat cards before the combat actually begins, so that is something that is going to help us even think in advance what we want to do and which units we want to send to a specific combat. While in Forbidden Stars, you're taking combat cards, and again, something that occurred during my plays of the game is that you're taking the cards that you did not yet upgrade. Okay, they're still basic cards, and now you find yourself losing to something very simple like a Chaos Space Marine and one of these reinforcement tokens, and you're like, there's nothing I can do against it. So this is something that is really frustrating, because in Starcraft you're taking a lot of cards, and this is something that really gives you a lot of options. So of course there's even a bigger deck of different technology cards, okay, these cards that you can upgrade your combat deck. There's a lot of cards, but For me, it feels that the system with the combat dice that you have in Forbidden Stars, I'm not a fan of it. And here I think we're really going to see the separation between people who prefer combat without dice and combat with dice. And I've had many discussions with different people, of course, to each their own. You know, some people prefer like this, some people prefer like that. Me personally, I do prefer the system that you have in Starcraft, but at the same time, I have to tell you that I'm not a fan of doing combat where you need to take units from the map itself and put it on a different place like you have in Starcraft. So let's say, for example, again, that in Starcraft I'm going to do this movement with one of the order tokens. Now we need to first of all take these units off the board. We're going to leave one of the tokens over here to remember where we had the combat, right? And then we need to the attacker will need to start putting these units in front of each other, and combat here is going to feel a little bit more not comfortable, while in Forbidden Stars all the units are going to stay on the same place. You really don't need to move them or something like that. The combat is going to take place over there. So even though here it's going to feel more comfortable in terms of like logistics, let's say it like that, I still prefer the system that we have in Starcraft because it feels better. But this is for me. I don't think that there is a way for me to convince you that the combat system in Starcraft is going to be better than in Forbidden Stars. I really think that it's a matter of preference. I can tell you that even though it feels that the combat system in Starcraft is going to take longer than in Forbidden Stars, nope, not at all true. And because that is what is going to take time in Forbidden Stars. It's the combat that is the I don't know, the meat and bones of that game, you can say, because you're going to have 3 rounds of combat that you'll need to choose a card. The attacker is going to resolve, the defender is going to resolve, then you need to sometimes change dice, you need to add 1 more dice, then you need to calculate again how many of these weapon symbols that you have right over here, and then you need to compare it to how many shields the other player has. And not only that, you'll need to add to that what are the symbols that you can see on the cards. If you have multiple cards, then you need to count again. Then you have more of these tokens, either a shield or again one of these weapon symbols. So, this is not a weapon symbol, this is a weapon symbol. Doesn't feel more comfortable than Starcraft. And I'm going to tell you what Brian from Bad Crow Games told me, and I completely agree with him, because Forbidden Stars supposed to be the more streamlined game, okay, from Starcraft. It's supposed to be like some sort of a better version of it. I mean, otherwise, why to create another game that is considered to be the same? And over here, it just feels that you're getting lost in combat. So of course, the more you play, the more naturally it's going to come. But let me take you now to the next subject, that is how much time it's going to take us to play a game. And you'll understand that I'm not so sure Forbidden Stars is the more streamlined game. So yesterday, for example, I've played a game of 3 players of Forbidden Stars. The game was finished after 6 rounds with Adrien, that was the winner with the Space Marines, and the game took us 4 hours for 3 players. Now the thing is that Adrien and Charlie that played with me are already seasoned players of Forbidden Stars. I was still the guy that was relatively new to this game, but I knew the rules, so this is not what held us back. And still, I think that 4 hours for a 3-player game without the initial setup of the map is quite a lot. So I'm not so sure how come Forbidden Stars is the more streamlined version of Starcraft. So Starcraft still can take you quite a long time to play. I think again at least 1 hour per player, if not maybe more. So let's say that it's pretty much like in Forbidden Stars. But then why should I play Forbidden Stars? Where is the more streamlined version of the combat? Okay, maybe I don't need to take the pieces off the board, but still combat is taking so much time. it's at some point it's a little bit ridiculous. The next thing that I can compare between the two is that Starcraft will be able to be played with 5 and 6 players, while in Forbidden Stars you're going to have place only for 4 players. So this is again something that you should consider. I'm not so sure. I mean, I know Forbidden Stars can be better at 4 players. Of course, these kind of games profit from having more players around the table, but that is already a game that can last you, I don't know, 6 hours, again with the initial construction of the map and having around an hour and 20 minutes per player. It's quite a lot. It's already a game on a scale that I don't know if it's worth playing. So I think that if your group is a bigger group than 4 players, then I think that the choice here is really really obvious. Let's talk about another thing, that is the price of the game, and maybe I'll remember a few more things that I want to talk about. Both of the games are considered to be sort of grail games. I think that Starcraft cost me 150 euros to buy. I think that this is pretty much the average of price in the second-hand market for Forbidden Stars. I will not tell you how much Forbidden Stars cost me because I think you're going to hate me after that. 19 euros. But in any case, that was maybe the best deal that I did with a board game in my life, because it was dirt cheap. But I think that in terms of prices, the games are going to be pretty much the same. Out of print, of course, relatively difficult to have them. So if you do find a good deal for one of these games, I suggest you to get it. 2 other things that now I remember that are kind of missing to me is a player aid in Forbidden Stars. I mean, you have only this card that is going to tell you what are the different actions that you can take with the order tokens, while in Starcraft, not only you're going to have this card, okay, it's bigger of course, but it's going to list all the special victory conditions of the different factions. It's going to tell you what you can do with the order tokens, and also on the other side of this, you're going to have something amazing, and that is the average combat values of the different races, and that is sweet. You have a lot of information, true, but it's just going to make you take the better decisions. So this is something that I appreciate. Another thing that I forgot, so apologize for that, those are quite of big games, is that while in Forbidden Stars you're going to have only these 4 turn orders that are going to be upgraded. Let's say if you have bought one of these cards with the technology, then in Starcraft, when you're building a certain building, let's say different upgrades, doesn't matter what for now, you'll be able to use a different turn order, and it's not going to be like in silver, it's going to be in gold, and that is going to make that specific turn order stronger. So this is something again that you can hide from the other players. Again, to me it kind of feel better, because again, instead of using 4 order tokens in Starcraft, you have only 3 or upgraded tokens. This is again something maybe that I personally prefer, but again, it's another tick for Starcraft, so for me it's great. The last thing that I'm going to talk about before going to the bottom line of this video is the different event cards. Something that I didn't like in Forbidden Stars is that if you don't have an available turn order, your turn is just being skipped. And if you had a combat before and a combat later, that is something that can be so painful, and just like, oh, then I'm not going to play around, and then it can happen again. So again, you're not going to play around. Maybe it's a bit more rare that you will not play 2 rounds, but it does happen. So this is painful, and as a player, it's something that is not enjoyable. Whilst in Starcraft, every time that you cannot resolve an order token because it is not available, at least you're going to gain one of these event cards, which is again something that is going to bring you a certain bonus later on in this game. So this is something that at least like a consolation prize or something like that. It feels good, and also it kind of pushes the game more towards the end, because again, there is some sort of like an internal clock for this game, and that is the event cards. So the more event cards that you take, the more you're going to advance in the different stages of the game. And the easier the different factions will be able to achieve their special victory condition. One more thing, I'm sorry, just something that I forgot. And this is something that I feel is not so good with Starcraft. It feels like the factions are not super balanced, and I'm going to give you an example, and this is why I chose to show you that specific faction. So over here with Aldaris, the special victory condition is that first of all, the number of conquest points required for all enemy players to gain in a normal victory is raised from 15 to 20. So that is something that now, if neither of the factions have achieved their special victory condition, it's not enough to go to 15. They will have to go to 20, while Aldaris still needs to have only 15 victory points. When 2 or more the end draws near, which is something with a special event, doesn't matter, cards are played, the Aldaris faction immediately wins the game. This is something that, in my opinion, is very far from being balanced. I think that it's going to give a huge advantage to this faction because it's completely changing the way that all of the players are going to play. So it feels like if this faction is inside this game, everything is going to be completely different. Okay, this is again just from my experience playing Starcraft, and this is why most of the time when I'm going to play Starcraft, at least if it's with 5 players and not 6, then this faction is something that I will at least recommend to the other players with an explanation why I think that we shouldn't play with that faction. So, to the bottom line, guys, what should we take? So first of all, let's start with the easier question. Should we have both of them in our collection? Absolutely not. For a few reasons, let's concentrate in 2 of them. First of all, they're fluffing expensive, okay? 150 euros for a game. I mean, yeah, it's a great game, but 150 euros for a game just because it's out of print. Because if this game would not be out of print, I don't think it would have cost so much money. And 150 euros is something that I'm being relatively nice, because you can easily open BGG, open Starcraft BGG and tell me what are the prices that you're seeing over there. 150 euros is like, oh, okay, this is something that I can afford or whatever, but you can very easily see, according to how much the game is preserved or whatever, go to 200, 250, 300, even more. And that is a heavy price to pay, especially with the amazing variety of games that we have today in the board game world. The second thing is that both of the games are going to eventually, what is the main mechanism in both of these games? It's just putting these order tokens in the different planets or systems or whatever, and you need to think a little bit ahead. I mean, you cannot say, okay, I'm going to attack and then I want to build. So the last thing that I want to do is to build, so I'm going to put it first. So you need to work your way backwards, which can be a little bit confusing. It does have a certain logic once you're getting used to this game, but this is the main mechanism in both of these games, okay? Even though combat is going to be different and creatures are going to be different and clunky, not clunky, whatever, that is the game. So do I need to have 2 games that have basically the same mechanism? I don't think so. So I think it comes down, maybe the most important thing, which combat system do you prefer? Of course the theme, but that is something that, like, for me, it's of course going to be Starcraft, okay? Again, I love the IP, but if the combat system in Starcraft feels a bit too much for you, by taking the units off, starting to do this multiple skirmishes or something like that, then take Forbidden Stars. If the combat system in Forbidden Stars, just not for you, you are not a fan of like rolling these dice, multiple dice, sometimes you're going to roll 8 dice or something like that, and that is quite a lot to start. It's again also doesn't feel comfortable, but maybe you're a little bit more of a random kind of player that would like to use these dice and just take the combat cards right before the combat, with the risk that you will not have the combat cards that you wanted to have in this specific combat, of course. What am I going to keep? I'm guessing both of them, just because I don't know, man, to give away Forbidden Stars. No. I know that at some point I'm going to sell Forbidden Stars, or just going to give it to another friend to enjoy that game. For me, it's going to be Starcraft. And one last reason that may be the last nail in the coffin of me choosing Starcraft, that is this thing that is called Brood War expansion. So this is an advantage that Starcraft has and Forbidden Stars doesn't have. This thing that I'm not going to talk about it now because I think it will not be so fair for Forbidden Stars, but this thing is adding so much more things to StarCraft, and I think that probably is going to make it better. Okay, this is something that I should leave for another video, but if StarCraft, or if you're still sitting on the fence, you don't know what to choose, take a look at Brood War expansion and see maybe that will help you to take that decision. Again, super rare to find it. This is why my expansion is in French, which is easier to find and much less expensive. I think that I found it for 8 euros, and I think that even today I can find it for cheaper in French. But if you're not afraid of finding this in a different language and work a little bit on home translating the cards themselves from the internet and just like putting it in different sleeves, take a look, okay? I'm not saying more than that, take a look. So guys, I hope that you enjoyed the comparison, and I know that I'm going to probably trigger a lot of thoughts with the different viewers. So let's open a discussion. Tell me, Asaf, you're wrong. Asaf, you're right. This is what I had experience with these games. This is where you're wrong. And this is where something that you said that I didn't think about. And now that you've mentioned it, I kind of tend to agree. Let's open it, okay? Because I think that this is quite a cool topic to talk about. And that's it, you guys. If you learned something new or if you saw something that you like, consider subscribing to the channel and even join the community in supporting this channel. Take care, and I'll see you next time.